like you go through life and you get dirt or negative experiences happen, and it layers and then hardens and then layers and hardens and gets thicker and thicker. And sometimes it's really hard then to bash through it and be the person that you want to be, because you've got all these layers of difficult times that press down on you and stop you from growing. So if anybody has the opportunity to do any therapy of any kind, I mean, CBT was great for me, but I'm sure there's loads of different things. But just helping yourself is literally life-changing. I don't know where I'd be now if I hadn't done that.
Today's guest is Ali Murphy, a voice artist, actress, podcast and former flight attendant who worked in the aviation industry for 14 years, working in commercial, corporate, film, e-learning, video games and on camera. Ali's voice can be heard in many places, including TV, radio, podcasts and in a few British superstores. She is also the host and producer of the Red Eye, a storytelling podcast that came about when she realized that cabin crew have a lifetime of stories from their days of flying around the world. The Red Eye tells stories from the sky, covering everything from life-changing stories to love to unbelievable stories of outrageous passengers' behavior. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you so much.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on as a guest, and with your wealth of knowledge, I cannot wait to start this conversation.
Oh yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, especially like your podcast sounds amazing.
Oh, thanks. It's reasonably new. We're episode 17 now, I think. So we've been out for a few months, but it's been really lovely, and it's been fun telling these stories from the old days and getting some memories back out there.
Oh, that's excellent. So, with reading all of that out, what is one of the most courageous things you have done? Can you possibly pick one?
I think the most courageous, and we're gonna get right into it here. One of the most, because I think courageous things are usually the worst things that happen in your life that you get through. I'd say the most courageous thing I did was back in 2014. I was due to get married, and he was a lovely man, and we'd been together a few years, and it was just kind of leading to that point where, okay, this is what we do next, and I didn't have a huge amount of self-esteem at the time. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, and I remember thinking, he's a nice man. Why am I wanting anything more? And just feeling quite dissatisfied, because that does him a disservice. He was a lovely person, but he just wasn't the right person. I knew I didn't want to marry him, and it was getting closer and closer to the date. And 3 months before, a few things happened. It was almost like the universe was giving me big slaps around the face of like, nope, don't do that. Nope, this is not the right path. And but I left him. And the only reason why I say it's courageous, it's because at the time, I mean, I knew I was going to break a lovely person's heart. I knew that I was going to upset a lot of people. Like people had, my family and friends and mutual friends. I was going to rip myself out of my life. But I knew it didn't feel right. I felt like I was screaming inside, no, don't. And I needed to do something. So I left him, and I had a pretty miserable year after that. I felt, lots of self-doubt and very sad, and my grandmother wouldn't speak to me, and I just fell out with a few family members, and because they were concerned about me, I guess. But I was on then a self-destruction pattern. I think I was like, well, now I've done this, I might as well just go to hell. Just drank a lot, and I wasn't in a very good place. So I guess it's like a two-pronged thing with courage. One was that just leaving him in the first place. And the second one was dragging myself out of the pit of depression and drinking a lot to change my mindset. And that was the big thing I needed to do. I needed to change my entire way of thinking, because I had a big victim mentality. I had a big issue with success, and I was a very negative person. So I had to find a way to change my own mindset and completely change my own life. Now, I know that those things might not sound the most courageous. I know you've been through some incredible experiences that required so much courage, and people suffer through atrocious things
Mhm.
all the time.
Mhm.
But this is an everyday courage, I guess, and I guess that I have a lot of people. One of my episodes of the podcast is the story of how I came to leave my fiance and ended up with the life that I now have. And lots of people messaged me and just said that took a lot of courage because
Yes.
I didn't leave the guy and then we were divorced a year later, or it turned out to be a bad guy. Or I had lots of people just saying, I wish
Mhm.
I'd taken that chance. I just thought it was cold feet and I didn't, and my gut was telling me to leave and I didn't. So it's everyday courage, I guess,
Mm.
that maybe a lot of people have experience with.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for mentioning my journey. I appreciate that. And absolutely, like you say, you have different scales of courage. I mean, for some people, it's jumping out of an aeroplane with a
Hmm.
parachute. And for some people, it's just waking up every morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And none of it is irrelevant. None of it,
Mm,
I think a lot of the time, and that's probably a little bit of my old mentality coming back when I go, oh, I don't deserve to feel sad right now because I'm not going through atrocities. But we all have a little personal journey, and you've got to take care of
absolutely.
yourself. And it's better to deal with it than wallow in it and
Mm,
ignore it, not treat it.
absolutely. And that in itself takes courage. You don't,
Hmm.
actually, we don't realize, we don't give ourselves enough credit for how courageous we are daily. We
Hmm.
just don't.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially when it comes to things like mental health and looking after yourself. Put in, as parents,
Mm,
parents are always putting themselves last, and it's not always the best thing to do. So just getting out and doing something that will be good for your soul and good for your mental health, and then that trickles down to your family is everyday courage.
absolutely. And I think self care is so underrated.
Oh, it really is. Yeah.
Mhm,
There's no sometimes we can wallow in the sacrifice of what we do, and we
mhm,
call that courage.
mhm.
I'm sacrificing my mental health for my children, or I'm sacrificing my sleep for my children. I'm going to keep talking about children, I think. you know,
Why not?
I sacrifice all these things for other people, which means I'm
Mhm,
courageous.
mhm,
But doing something for yourself, looking after yourself, and like they say in the airplanes,
mhm.
please make sure you fit your own mask before helping others, is because you are of
Absolutely.
no use if you are not well. So
Mhm.
that's why you have to help yourself, and sometimes taking that is courageous, taking that chance.
Absolutely. And that nicely goes on to my next question. You are a former flight attendant. How did that journey start?
So I used to be an actress back in the 90s.
Hmm.
It was all I wanted to be when I was a little girl. That was my dream, and I did pretty well. I was on TV in the late 90s, and I was a Shakespearean actress, and I got
Wow.
great reviews, and that was lovely. But then when I was about 20, I was a bigger woman. I was told by casting directors that, oh, the trouble is you're a bit fat and you're not beautiful and you're not unusual looking. You're just quite plain. And we just don't have any parts to cast you in that sense. Because back in those days, it was, the days of the supermodels and everyone was very
Yeah,
skinny and
slim.
unhealthily so. I look back now and think, oh my God, you don't see that body shape anymore.
No, not at all.
So, and I was devastated because I'd had so much confidence throughout my youth, the confidence of youth, and then to suddenly get it hit around I felt like I was a beautiful person, and
Mm,
then to be told outright, "You are not," it was a massive hit on my self esteem, and led me into sort of eating disorders and some
mm,
body issues and stuff like that. But then I was in acting class and I wasn't booking any work. And from going from being a child actor that was booking work to nothing, I was getting a bit concerned. And I was in an acting
mm,
class one day, and this other student was saying, "Oh, I can't come to class next week because I'm I'm working and I'm going to, I think it was Goa for 5 days or something."
wow.
And I was like, "Well, that sounds lovely. What do you do?" And he was a flight attendant. So
Mhm,
I thought, well, let's look into that. And I found there was only one airline that was hiring at the time, and it was Virgin Atlantic, and they
mhm,
seemed very glamorous and fun, and it was long haul only, so it was literally traveling
mm,
around the world. And I thought, do you know what? Maybe this is what I need. I'm going to fly around the world. I'm going to leave the acting thing for a little bit, but I'll come back to it when maybe I'm 13. It doesn't matter what I look like because I won't be playing romantic leads. I'll be playing the mothers of the romantic leads. And that's what my plan was. So I went and flew around the world. And I only meant to do it until I was 30. So that would have been 10 years, but I went to 34.
Wow.
14 years flying.
That's excellent. So now, one of my, the $1 million question, you must have had your fair share of difficult passengers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How were you able to deal with them? And what's your worst? Come on.
Oh, I mean, there are so many, mainly drunk passengers. I mean, I've been cornered by 3 massive dudes before in the back galley because I wouldn't serve them any more alcohol. And I'm only 5'3", and these guys were like towering over 6 foot. Had me in a corner and was sort of shouting at me about how they pay for their money, they should get their drinks and stuff like that. But I had to be firm because I was the manager, so it was my decision. Also, once you've made that decision, you can't go back on it and go, well, okay, since you threatened me, okay. But you know what? The biggest, and you've just brought this memory back to me. I remember when I was young, I think maybe like 22, 23, and I'd only been flying a year or two, and there was a woman in economy, and I'd been serving her. And I must have just had a bit of an attitude, and I didn't think about it. And then this woman complained to my manager about my attitude, and I suddenly was like, "Oh my gosh, that's awful! Like someone thinks that of me. Like I've been rude to somebody so much that they felt like they needed to point that out to my manager." So I took myself and sat with that woman, and I just said, I am so sorry. I didn't realize I was coming across like that. And that is awful. I don't want to be that person, and I don't want you to have this experience. That's not what I'm here for. And I'm just devastated that I've come across like that. So I'm really sorry. And I sat and I chatted with her for about 15 minutes about life, her vacation, everything that I was just chatted to her like a normal person. And that changed everything for me. I guess I needed it. I think it was part of growing up, I guess. I needed to realize that the way that I was affected other people. So my behavior would affect other people. And I genuinely loved giving people a great experience on the planes. That was part of the joy of it, was especially those people. Oh, in fact, both. So people who were going on holiday or had a big special reason for traveling, it was so wonderful to make it extra special. I would do little things. I'd like make them a little cocktail from upper class, or I'd find some extra snacks, or just do what I could. Like if it was a big thing, I'd get the crew to make a card, or I would,
That's
I don't know,
really
I'd
nice.
make an announcement and stuff. I suddenly just felt like I have the power to make this an incredible experience for somebody. So I would do that. And similarly, I mean, I had a really sad occasion where this lady had been out on holiday with her husband, and her husband had died. And I sat with her on the way back. We cleared some space. Luckily, we had some spare seats. So we cleared like a whole area so she could be on her own and cry if she needed to. And I sat and I just held her hand and talked with her for a bit and just gave her care that she needed. So it could come from both sides of the spectrum of, bringing joy or bringing comfort. You up in the air, you are a counsellor, you are an events coordinator, you are firefighters, police, medics, you're everything up there.
Absolutely.
But I revelled in that. I loved doing that, and I loved creating memorable experiences for people. But yeah, there are some tricky ones. And at that point, bringing it back to your question, at that point, if somebody was being awful, there was no being nice to them after that. I had somebody spit in my face.
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to get the police out for you, love, and I'm not going to speak to you for the rest of the flight. I had somebody absolutely trolleyed. I think they'd drank like a bottle of wine, but they'd also taken sleeping tablets. I think they'd thought it was a good idea if I want some good sleep, I'll take sleeping tablets and drink some wine and I'll be right out. But they ended up going doolally, and they went around, stole everybody's shoes and then hid them under their seat. And then the time when I had to then grab him was when he tried to open the door, which he couldn't have done, but it's scary to see that happen. But yeah, we then had to pin him down, and then that's when the handcuffs come out and all that stuff. So I've had some pretty awful passengers. I've been someone put their hand up my skirt whilst I was walking, and you just think, well, I shouldn't have to deal with this.
Absolutely.
Most of the problems were due to alcohol, I'll be honest, or alcohol and drugs mixed. It was the worst. But yeah, there was a lot of bad folk as well.
And do you find as the years went on, did it get any better?
No, it got worse,
Oh,
if
okay.
anything. And I mean, I wouldn't fly now at all because I think especially since the pandemic, people seem to there's an attitude change in humanity right now. There's a sense of entitlement. There's a sense of righteousness that they feel like they own this little section and they should have that, and you get me what I want. And I don't know what's caused that, because I had a little hope during the pandemic that people would be nicer, because I thought, well, we're all in this together and we're all spending time with our families, and maybe this will be a good thing for humanity. But from my many friends that still fly tell me that people are a lot worse nowadays, a lot ruder. When I started flying, I didn't fly in the glamorous old days of, the white gloves and the carving meat in the aisle or anything like that. But I have spoken to some people from my podcast that did fly in those days, and they say it's dramatic, the change in passengers now, because back then it was, a real treat to go out, and
Absolutely.
people were kind and respectful. And now, we live in an age where people just feel the right to voice their opinions or get as much free stuff as they can. It's tricky.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can understand that. My last flight, it's hilarious. I've got to tell you this because my family really laughed. I flew out to Mauritius and said, "Oh, you haven't booked your seat." I said, "No, I'm not bothered where I sit." And they said, "Oh, do you have good health?" I said, "Yes, I do." "Oh, if in an emergency we sit you near the fire exit, would you be willing to help if there is an emergency?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." They said, "Yeah, you've got extra leg room." And I was thinking, I'm about 5'1". I was thinking, and I took a photo and I sent it to my family. They said, "Yeah, like you really needed the room."
Oh, isn't it lovely though, not to have everyone put their seat in your face?
Yeah. So it was lovely. But I just thought it was hilarious because out of all the people, I'm probably the person that has enough leg room in any seat.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Do
Yeah.
you know what? There's been times when I've had to move people from the exits because they weren't able to sit there because of various reasons. Maybe their ability with their bodies, and that's horrific, having to ask somebody to move from a great legroom seat because of a physical reason. But yeah, it's needed.
Yeah.
I interviewed for my podcast. I interviewed one of the passengers from the Hudson River crash. Do you remember that?
Okay.
That plane that landed in the Hudson River in New York? And I interviewed him, and he was the last passenger off the plane. And he says now when he flies, he usually gets put in the exit row, and he will, if he doesn't think somebody can open the door in an emergency, he'll ask for them to be moved himself as a passenger, because he's like, I know how important this is. If somebody wasn't able to open that door because the crew weren't near the doors that were able to use, so it was a passenger operated exit that got used, and everybody survived on that flight. So it is an important job.
Yeah.
I don't think people realise.
Yeah, I said, yeah, I'm happy to help. Yeah.
Good.
It's good, yes. Another $1 million question. What's your favorite destination and why?
First answer that comes to my head is New York. My preference is I would always fly LA and New York. I liked LA because I felt like I was a movie star again. I'd rent a car and I'd drive down Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
You all thinking I was in a movie. But New York felt like a home from home in a weird way, because it was very different from where I lived. I lived in the countryside in England. It wasn't, I didn't live in a New York kind of place. But New York, I went so often that I started to know like my favorite coffee place or my favorite place to get breakfast. And I would have a little route that I would run around Central Park. And I would walk around that city for hours just looking up, and I loved it. I loved the people and their craziness, and I loved the park, and I loved the city and the history, and yeah. So New York was one of my favorite destinations, I think.
Oh, wow, that's excellent. I haven't actually been to New York, but I love LA. I've been to LA. I love LA
Yeah,
as well.
it's a good amount of crazy fun. If
Yeah.
anything was closer together, it's just too far away. You have to drive everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got some very good friends that live out there. One of my friends, he actually picked me up and he drove me around. He goes, "Oh, I'm getting to see LA from the perspective of a tourist. It's great fun."
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah.
It's got its merits. It's got some dark places, but it's got its merits. The beach is nice.
That's brilliant. So how does that lead into what you're doing now? So how did your journey of being a voice-over artist begin then? Is that from the acting?
Yeah, well, kind of. So it's a bit of a long story, as in it goes over a few years. Basically, when I was 30, when I was turning 30, I was still quite overweight, and I decided that if I wanted to be a healthy 40-year-old, I wanted and I was an overweight smoker. So I gave up smoking and I went on Weight Watchers. Other diet plans are available, but I went on Weight Watchers. I was like, I'm going to lose this weight. And I lost about, oh gosh, I don't know what it is, about 2 stone. I lost, and I felt great. And then Weight Watchers were looking for real members to be in their new advert. So
Oh,
I thought,
wow.
well, I used to do acting.
Yeah.
That would be fun. And I've lost all this weight and I feel good, so why not? So I applied and I had an audition, and then I got a phone call. I remember I was in Las Vegas on a trip with work, and I got this phone call saying, "Oh, we'd really love you to be in the advert, but we'd also love you to be one of the faces, like the main features. So you'll have a magazine cover and you'll have your own little advert. Will you be up for that?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, this is exciting." And it was it was in 2012. There was a 3-minute long commercial with Alicia Dixon. She'd written a song about feeling good about yourself.
Yes.
And we did a 3-minute long music video that was a one shot. So it was literally like from one person to another. Oh, just sorry, not my microphone. It was like one person to another. Someone dived into a swimming pool, they went underwater, then they came up. It was this incredibly technical, incredible advert, and it was very expensive to make. And I was a part of it.
Wow.
And I was on that set and thinking, this is amazing. I forgot what this felt like. I got that buzz back that I used to get when I was on TV in the 90s. And I thought, I miss this. And it always percolated in the back of my mind. But I was like, this is the experience. Again, maybe this was the universe telling me, this is time for you to move on. So another part of it was that I had to do some commercials, voiceover commercials. They picked me up from the airport with a little sign saying Ali Murphy, and I got a limo driver. I felt very fancy. I was still in my crew uniform, but went to the studio, recorded these voiceovers, and on the way out, the engineer said, "Hey, is this your job?" And I said, "Oh, no, I'm just cabin crew." And he said, "Well, you've actually got a really good talent for it. You should maybe think about doing it." And he gave me some details of like a company that did some training and made demo reels. And I kind of signed up and thought, "Oh, we're going to do this." And then my ex-fiance at the time was a bit negative about it, and he was like, "I don't think it's a good idea. I think you're just going to get all your hopes up, and then they'll get dashed again. And you best stay in it. You've got a good job. Why don't you just stay in this job?" And I was like, "Okay." So I'd done a couple of classes and I'd made like a little reel, but I then gave it up again until I'd left my fiance, had my year of misery, and then I met my now husband, and he's an animator, so he's a creative person. Wow. He's a doer. If you've got a dream, he'll do it. Yeah. And there were redundancies coming up at Virgin Atlantic, and my role was one of the ones at risk, but they were asking for volunteers. And he said, "Well, if you could do anything, what would you do?" And money didn't matter. What would you do? And I said, "I'd do voiceover." He said, "Well, let's make that happen then." And he did a little bit of research and got me a microphone, shoved me in the closet, which was the best place to record because it was covered in clothes, so it was good like sound treatment. Yeah. And I just, for 6 months, read books and practiced scripts and did recording and editing and practiced solidly for 6 months. And then I took redundancy and I was thrown into it. And because I had redundancy money, which was a privilege to be able to invest in my training and equipment and time, I became a full-time voice artist within 6 months, which is good.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. And I felt like it, sometimes when you're on the right path, things are easy. Like opportunities just seem to open themselves up for you, and you think,
they
"Oh
align
gosh, that's
up."
strange." They do. The biggest thing I did, one of the trainings I did was something called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Because I had such a victim mindset still. And I remember telling people before when I was leaving the Virgin, I was saying, "Well, I'm going to go and try and be a voiceover artist, but I'll probably be back in 6 months. Oh, I'll probably fail." Like I was telling people that before it even started. And I needed to sort that out. So I took some CBT training, and it was amazing. It literally changed my life. And still to this day, I'm still a very positive, very grateful person that I wake up every morning going, ooh, what's going to happen today? Ooh, what opportunities are going to make themselves known to me today? And I'm now a doer. I'm now what my husband is. I'm a doer rather
Wow.
than a victim. So that's great as well.
That's brilliant. And the thing is, it really is like it's getting out of our own way. We don't realize that. And at the time, we can't see it. But just allowing to strip back. It's not about putting more on. It's about taking things off, stripping back,
Yeah. I
getting
think
back.
it's like, dirt. Like you go through life and you get dirt or negative experiences
Mm-hmm.
happen, and it layers and then hardens and then layers and hardens and gets thicker and thicker. And sometimes it's really hard then to bash through it and be the person that you want to be, because you've got all these layers of difficult times that press down on you and stop you from
Yes.
growing. So if anybody has the opportunity to do any therapy of any kind, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
CBT was great for me, but I'm sure there's loads of different things, but just helping yourself is literally life changing. I don't know where
Absolutely.
I'd be now if I hadn't done that. I think I'd be a miserable, kind of unhealthy person that was blaming lots of other things for my situation. But
Wow.
instead I took control
Yeah.
and was able to do that. Now, I know I'm coming from a really privileged position here. I was able to invest in this sort of coaching, and I was able to take time for myself. And I know not a lot of people do have all of that, but I'm grateful for it. And if anybody can just think, well, what can I do with my situation? Is there
Mm-hmm.
any way that I can work on myself? Then that would be a great thing to come from this conversation. But I do appreciate that I do have a lot of privilege here. Like, I've been able to do this for myself.
Absolutely. And I'm pleased. Absolutely. Yeah. You've worked hard for it, though.
I have worked
Mm,
hard, but then
mm,
that's another
mm,
part of it. I
mm,
enjoy that, the building thing. Like when I
mm,
started my podcast, and I'm sure it was the same for you when you
mm,
started yours, you come up with like a spark of an idea.
mm.
And I found the best thing I can do is write things down or make voice notes if I
Yes.
can't write at the time. Keep notes of every idea you have, and it starts to build into a fully formed idea, and then you can action it. And those sort of things are so exciting. Meeting other people, networking, making connections with people.
Mm,
A lot of the great experiences in life come from connections with other people. So get out
absolutely.
there and meet and talk and collaborate, see what you can do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. How does one look after their voice? And there's a lot of things I've heard, like honey water, gargling. So, what's the best way to look after your voice?
So I follow a fantastic voiceover coach who I am, again, connected with. I've met her a few times through the
Mhm,
voiceover industry, and her name is Nick Redman, and she has an incredible podcast. You need to check this out. Nick Redman, she's the vocal coach, and she's does vocal coaching for voiceovers, actors, podcasters, and everything like that.
mhm,
And she's managed to bust most of the myths I had thought was true about vocal health.
mhm.
She says things like, honey water, it might feel nice, but it doesn't go through your vocal cords. Because if it goes past your vocal cords, you're going to drown.
Yeah.
It feels nice on a sore throat.
Mhm,
I've avoided dairy for ages
mhm, mhm.
because I thought if I ate dairy or drank milk or something before a voiceover session, it would make my vocal cords claggy. And she was like, but it doesn't touch your vocal cords. I was like, oh yeah, what about that? The most important thing that Nick Redman says, hydration.
Mm,
Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. And
mhm,
anything apart from alcohol is hydrating. A cup of
mhm,
tea, water, just whatever you can, but hydrate throughout the day is really important. And so that's what I do most of the time. I drink a lot of water and a lot
mhm,
of herbal teas,
mhm,
and that's the best thing for vocal health. And then the next important thing is, before you're doing a lot of speaking, is to warm up your voice. And it's as simple
mm,
as doing a 5-minute warm up. And she has some great ones on her podcast. And she's got a group, I think, as well, that can get these great little 5-minute warm ups. And they're nothing big trills, sort of doing and just expanding your voice. If I ever feel like a bit something's not working
mhm.
here, I drop my Adam's apple or whatever that's called down into the bottom of my thing, and I talk really deep for a little bit, and it seems to open everything up a little bit more.
That's a
So
good
it's just
tip.
doing little, I know, right, little things like that. And I have to work a lot early in the morning because of
Mm,
I live in America.
mm,
but I'm British, and so most of my work is still in the UK and Europe. So I work frequently about 6 a.m. Your mouth it's like a muscle. So you need to do, I mean, I hope this doesn't sound gross to people, but I'll do it for the camera, but get your tongue moving. Opening up your mouth, trills, going, things like that. All of those things are just getting the mouth moving, getting the muscles warmed up and ready to form words. Otherwise, you can sound a bit sluggish. But yeah, and steam. So getting in a hot shower is a great thing. Or the old, when your mum used to put a towel over your head and a bowl of steaming water when you were sick, that sort of thing. But yeah, mainly it is hydration is the key for vocal health.
That's excellent. Yeah, because I drink a lot of water and I have herbal teas.
Great.
Absolutely. Yes. And I always say, when they say 80% is water, my body is actually 80% water.
It's funny, isn't it? A lot of people say, I don't want to drink a lot of water because I don't want to go to the toilet all the time. But I'm like, but that's good. That's flushing toxins out. You need to go to the toilet.
I can't imagine not drinking as much as I do. I probably have 3 litres a day. I may be excessive there.
I'm the same. No, I'm the same. And I always wonder because, I remember my grandmother wouldn't drink for like 4 days or something. She'd have a cup of tea and that was it.
Wow.
How did they feel? We must be so like, I don't know how different we must feel, or if you just get used to it. But that older generation don't drink much water.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine not.
No. I think that's probably why we're all looking a bit younger nowadays. We're in,
it's good for the
keeping
skin.
our skin healthy. Yeah.
Definitely a plus there. Yes.
Yeah.
So you host the Red Eye podcast. Tell me more about the show, Ali.
So it started off last year. I did a true crime podcast and narrating it. It was so much fun. I loved that form of storytelling, where you felt like you were just talking to one person and telling them like this incredible story. I loved it, and I thought, I'd love to do more work and I couldn't find anywhere of getting more work like that. Well, maybe I could do my own, and I started writing down my stories of my days as a flight attendant. Mainly so I don't forget them the older I get, and I can tell my son one day all the crazy stuff I did in my 20s and 30s. And I realized I had a bunch of really good stories there. And it literally came to me. I remember I was driving my son to swim class, and I thought, I should have a podcast. I should do my own podcast of stories. But I thought, I'm not great at writing. I'm not I'm amazed by writers. They have such great skill of, putting things together, storyline and pinning things and plots and stuff like that. So I could write it down and be like, and then we went here, and then we drank this, and then we went and saw this person, and it wouldn't be that interesting. I needed somebody with that talent. And there's an incredible author who was also cabin crew called Kaylee Kay. And I had narrated her first audiobook, which was about an airline, a fictitious airline. And I was like, I wonder if she'd be interested in sort of working together with me on this. So I called her up and she was like, oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. I was thinking about doing a podcast too, but I can't speak. So, and she's like, I don't want to use my voice. So we were like, well, this is perfect then. And then just as the luck had it, she was actually flying to Seattle, which is where I live, a week later. I'm like, well, this is serendipitous. So we met up, we had a glass of wine and we chatted through everything, and I think we plotted the first 6 episodes. And so it's a lot of work from both of us. I mean, she writes a story a week, which blows my mind. And we try and keep them short because I know for me personally, I like to listen to podcasts that are sort of no more than half an hour long when I'm driving between chores or I'm doing the laundry or something like that. I just like getting ready. I like to listen to a podcast. So I didn't want to think too long. So that kind of worked. So I don't think she could write a full novel every week. But yeah, she writes a short story every week, and I put together the sound design, which is something I've discovered I love doing. So putting the sound design, getting the music together, I narrate it, produce it, and then put it out there. I love doing it. It's so much fun, and I feel like I've changed as a person creating my own content. It's given me a confidence that I really appreciate. I love it.
Yeah, I can tell with your passion. I can tell how passionate you are.
Yeah, I do. I really like it. On the side of that, I also do sketches because I've always wanted to be a comedy actor. So I do little sketches about being a flight attendant, and put them out there alongside on the social medias alongside the podcast. Is my little comedy sketches about being a flight attendant, and that's been a lot of fun too. But I try and do one a week, and that's a lot. It's a lot of pressure. I've got to film one tomorrow, and I haven't even decided what theme to do yet. So
Oh, wow.
but that's quite fun as well. It's just having that creativity and having that outlet is it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's excellent. So what would you say so far is your biggest learning?
I think going from a career like being a flight attendant and into something creative and technical and owning my own business has been such a learning curve, and I'm still learning every day. I still take classes and workshops and stuff to make sure that I'm doing things right. The technical side of audio engineering that was a big steep learning because I hadn't used a computer. You know, I flew when there was no iPads for the cabin crew. It was just you did everything by hand, and I hadn't used a computer for like 15 years.
Wow.
Let's face it, those early computers weren't really what anything to do with what we have now. So learning how to use technology. The best thing I ever learned was learning how to be a business, and it wasn't something that I really thought I was going to do. I just thought, oh, I'm going to do lovely voices, and I'm going to read some scripts, and it would be great. But actually, I'd say 80% of my business is marketing, administration, and having to do all those sort of things. So the biggest learning curve has been how to market myself in a authentic way without, I don't want that icky feeling of pushing myself on people. I just genuinely want to be of assistance. If somebody needs a voice that sounds like mine, then I'm there and I'm ready to help them with their project. But yeah, just learning that whole side of things, I think, has been the biggest learning curve.
That's brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah. And amazing things you have done in your life. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So what resources do you recommend, tools, daily tips to anyone that wants to start doing voiceover?
I'd recommend a few things. So there are some great online training companies out there. Gravy for the Brain is one of them. They have every lesson about the basics and the advanced techniques of being a voiceover online. That's a membership program, so you could join that. And if you are looking to do something creative, my biggest tip right now is get a notepad, or if you're not great with writing, get some sort of recording equipment like your phone, the voice memos, and start doing a train of thought process. And this is how I mainly started this year doing with the podcast. I would sit for 20 minutes. I think I started at 10 because I have a 4-year-old, so I don't always have 20 minutes. But I would sit and write for 20 minutes, whatever was going on in my head. Even if it was, I don't know what to write today.
Yeah.
I had a sandwich for lunch. I like sandwiches. And then you start thinking, and then your brain starts going off. I remember I was saying, oh, I really wish I was writing, it popped into my head. I really wish I'd asked my grandma more questions about what she was like when she was 20. I'd love to know what she was like as a young woman. I never really had that relationship with her, and I wish I could have asked her those questions. And then I thought about, I bet there's some flight attendants that used to fly in the 60s that are still around that have some incredible stories.
Yeah,
I thought, I need to write. And just from writing down my train of thought, and you could do it in a voice note or something as well, ideas start creeping in from the back of your head because you're just letting your mind be free for a little bit and letting all the stuff come through. That's my biggest tip. Anyone that wants to do something creative is let those ideas out and just write. And no one else is going to read it. It doesn't have to be neat writing. It doesn't have to be, you can cross bits through if you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted to say. You're probably not even going to read it, I'll be honest. I've got a note full of my scribbles. I'm not going to go back and read that, but it's just the process of writing it down and getting it out of your head. Another way of doing that is finding a buddy that you can just talk to and just have go for a walk in nature and talk to them side by side. And sometimes I find ideas come out just like that, just from talking to somebody and sounding off, basically. And nature's always a good way to do that because nature's lovely.
Absolutely. So Ali,
yeah, with the voiceover stuff, it's a real commitment. I'm going to say a lot of people want to be a voice artist and they'll try, but you have to solidly work at it.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a real focus. You have to be able to focus your business. You have to be able to do marketing. You have to be able to invest in equipment and voiceover demos and network and things like that. So it's the best job in the world. I love it. But yeah, if you want to get in, it's not something you can do as a quick buck. It's not going to make you any quick money. You have to kind of be able to invest in it and work on yourself, get coaching, etc.
Brilliant. So, Ali, where can the listeners find you online, your podcast? What's your website?
So my voiceover website is alimurphy.co.uk, 2 L's in Ali. And on all my social media, I'm Ali Murphy Voice. So yeah, come find me if you like. And then the podcast, theredipod.com is the website. And we're available wherever you get your podcasts, but you can find us on social media, the Red Eye Pod. But yeah, come and join us. It'll be fun. And if anybody has any good stories about flying, I've been interviewing passengers as well. If anybody's got any good stories, let me know. Happily talk to you.
Absolutely. And all your details will be in the show notes. So please do go ahead and connect with Ali. So thank you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others and made a difference. I really want to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you so much. It's just life and we learn our lessons on the way, right?
Thank you, Ali Murphy. So we are all about Create the Courage to be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
The definition of courage, I think, is knowing what the right thing to do is, and even if it's difficult or scary, is doing it.